great to see so many committed alumni and so many friends on this call. And I'm really couldn't be more thrilled to be moderating this conversation with a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, and really one of I think the most effective and tenacious and passionate advocates for the state of Israel and the Jewish people that we have on our team, and really a treasure. And she's been out spreading, really telling a story that's very compelling from a unique perspective. And I'm excited to hear to get into it with Noa and talk a bit about her book. For those of you who don't know her, though, I just want to give you a little background. Noa Tishby is an actress, producer, writer, and activist. She was born and raised in Tel Aviv and served 2.5 years in the Israeli army before she landed a starring role on the nation's highest rated primetime drama, Ramat Aviv Gimel. She became a household name in Israel, appearing in numerous TV shows, films, theater productions, and national fashion campaigns before she moved to LA, where she sold the Israeli TV show In Treatment to HBO, making history as the first television show, the first Israeli television show to become an American series. Noa's co-produced over 150 episodes, which earned a Peabody Award and 12 Emmy and Golden Globe nominations. In Treatment's now back in production at HBO for its 4th season. Noa is a passionate political activist. She founded a nonprofit called Act for Israel, which was Israel's first online advocacy organization, has become widely known as Israel's unofficial ambassador. And most recently, she's the author of Israel, A Simple Guide to the Most Misunderstood Country on Earth, which was published this past April by Simon & Schuster. So I want to get right into it. Noa, tell us why you wrote the book and why you saw the need for a book like that. And I'm sorry, if I could ask everybody, if you're not speaking, to please mute. Thank you so much.
Zoom life. Hi, everybody. Zoom life. It's okay. If you hear my dog whining or my son coming in the room, I apologize in advance. So it's literally the answer that I tell everybody because it's the truth. The reason I wrote the book is because I needed the book. I needed this book. I know how we all find ourselves in situations in which we have to explain Israel. We have to defend Israel. We hear this lies / misinformation / disinformation / slander about Israel. And sometimes we're like, no, but that's not that. First of all, that's not how it went down. Second, that's not true. And we find ourselves like lost for words, can't explain what the country is about, why it needs to be there, why it needs to be secure, why it needs to be safe, why it's not just important for the Jewish people, it's important for non-Jewish people, for Western society. And I couldn't find, I had friends and people I was working with that were asking me for a book. Like, is there a book I can read? Is there something I can read? And the truth was that a lot of the material about Israel is very brainy and very studious and very historically heavy and very deep. And it's material that I would read, that I'm sure a lot of us on the call would read, people that are fascinated by the subject would read, but the majority of the world won't. And I knew that a lot of my friends won't. And I was able throughout the years, with my years of advocacy, I was able to find a way to explain to people what is Israel about in a very quick and easy to understand way. And I knew that there isn't a book like that. So at some point I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna write it. It just doesn't exist. I'm gonna write it. So that's why I wrote it. It was, I needed help. I needed something to be like, give to people and be like, let's read this first, then we'll have a conversation, and give them something that they actually would read.
Having read the book, I can say that, my background, I was
the first. You read it
I got it before it was published. I got it when it was
printed. You got it on PDF.
Yeah, which I want to get that signed. Maybe I'll turn it into an NFT or something. But I'm really, it's a tremendous. I have to say, I've been in this business almost as long as you have, Noa. I was at the UN for 3 years as the chief speechwriter there, and struggled often, to think about how do you tell Israel's story in a way that's compelling, that the man on the street, our mutual friend and one of my mentors, Ron Professor, often said, if the guy who's picking up the garbage in the morning can't understand what we're saying, we're not saying it in the right way. And that's what struck me so powerfully in reading the book. Talk to, and this is a group, of advocates, of people who are very connected to this issue, care a lot. what are some of your lessons that you try to, like, step out as like really being a strategist, and how do you think about communicating in a way that people are going to be able to hear the message you're trying to deliver? How do you do it?
So there are a couple of things. First of all, in terms of communicating, I think the medium is the message in a way. And I made sure that the book is read, it's conversational, it's tongue in cheek, it's irreverent, it's sometimes funny. I like taking the piss at myself. I love self-deprecating humor. So it's, in terms of the language and how I communicate the story, I just talk. I'm not being like, I'm not talking above people's heads. I can do it. I choose not to. I'm like, let me just communicate it to you in a way that you can understand it. In terms of the message, what I found throughout the years is that we sometimes assume that people know more than they do. And we assume that they know more than they do. And we kind of skip a few key issues. And it's not for every situation, right? If you have a child or a grandchild in college, they can't be like, oh, 2,500 years ago this and that happened. But I realized that when I would sit down with people and explain to them the rundown of history, right? Let's talk about the last 2,500 years. Let's talk about, so there's a lot of truths that have become like a lot of like fake news that became real in terms of like BDS movement or whatever. By the way, my son is not interrupting, but my dog is.
One thing,
They're
it's
whining. This is just like, this is comical. This like Zoom life, promoting a book on Zoom is comical.
at least he didn't do it when you were on the View, Noah. That's all I can say.
I know. Oh my God. They were out of the house in the crate. I mean, my child was at school. My dog was in the crate. But anyway, so I made sure that if you confront somebody at a dinner party, you need to know to answer to whatever it is that they're telling you. So to listen what it is the complaint is and answer the complaint head on. But when writing the book, it was important for me to explain to people the background and the history. So if you read through BDS website, they say stuff like, I'm paraphrasing, but like, Israel invaded Palestine and deported 7.3 million people. So first of all, 7.3 million, where did you get that number from? Number one. Number two, that whole notion of Israel invading a state and dismantling another state is something that isn't true. Obviously, we know this. So in the book, it was important for me to go back and make it fun and make it relatable. But like, let's go back in history for a second. Let's talk about, I have a subchapter, which is like literally less than 1,000 words, in which I run down history. What had happened since the last day of the Jewish diaspora and all the way to today. And then you kind of understand that there wasn't, that piece of land was swapped hand, and it was only like a sovereign Jewish state throughout history. So stuff like that is important to kind of point out the facts, do them in a way that's fun and lighthearted, right? But do it clearly, super accurately, so you have like a meta conversation and explanation about how we got to where we got to. So these two things are very important, like a conversational language and accuracy in terms of facts, but also giving them to people because people don't know. They just don't know. They don't know the history. They don't know the difference between Hamas and the PA. They don't know the borders. They just don't know.
By the way,
to do that.
I've spent the last 15 years talking to reporters about Israel, and these are educated people. And I am always shocked by exactly what you said, how little they know.
They don't.
And how often we have to really go back into really basic, rudimentary things to help people understand. They don't know anything about its political system. They don't know anything about its government. They don't know anything about its history. They don't know anything about the Palestinians. It's all very.
But they have a lot of opinions.
That's right. They have a lot of opinions. They've read they've seen a CNN story, but they haven't actually dealt. And I think one of as advocates, like just demonstrating that knowledge with folks is a good way to help them understand, well, maybe this is more complicated than I think.
Yeah.
I want to get to a really specific thing, because this group is engaged on campus, as alumni, in some cases as students. Obviously, that's a very specific context. Noah, you are a loud and proud progressive, which I think is part of the reason why you're such an effective advocate.
I would say liberal, because now like saying progressives, that's like, okay. I'm nowhere near the squad.
Right. So you're a loud and proud liberal, and yeah. you have some deep friendships with elected officials like Richie Torres and other people who are definitely on the left side. And so I'm wondering if you have advice for how how this group can help to win the argument or engage in the debate on campus, where it's in more of a, like, on the left side of the political spectrum in terms of that
Yeah.
content.
So first of all, in terms of Israeli politics, I've never endorsed anybody. I've never said pro or con any politician, anything. I make sure that I stay above the fray that way and don't align myself with any political party in the U.S. Or personality in Israel. In the U.S., I'm a proud registered independent. I specifically don't align myself with a party because I'm all about values and issues and policies, right? So I'm very liberal in terms of every single social thing you can imagine, but like strong on the fence. I would say I'm a common sense voter, right? Like you can't be crazy on this side or on that side. Like nothing is that black and white. So that's important to kind of note.
To clarify, so thank you.
Yeah. Just because I just think that like both the extreme left and the extreme right they're going crazy. So, we have to make sure that the majority of the American people, the majority of us, our voices are heard, like common sense, normal centric, let's make a deal type of thing and make things happen. So that's number one. But the thing is this, right? There's no doubt to all of us that are in this world that if you are a liberal, you need to support Israel within the context of the Middle East. Like if you love democracy, why would you align yourself with failed states, Sharia states, Islamist regimes, autocratic, kleptocrat? Like why would you align yourself with those regimes? And the thing that have started kind of shaping up in the left is instead of empowering the Palestinians for strong leadership, for more financial investments, like for anything that would empower them to make good choices for themselves, it's all about bashing Israel. And when you bash Israel, it's then being used by forces that don't want Israel to be around. And we know what had happened. So it's important for me. First of all, I wrote this book for college specifically. I had like the 18 to 35 kind of frame in my mind of like that. I've realized now that it's skews. Actually, it's a little wider than I thought. But those were my friends, like people that I hung out with throughout the years that are liberal, that are active on campuses in these liberal groups and organizations, and are being shunned out because they either need to denounce Israel or not speak about it. And I'm like, wait, you guys are wrong. Like there's nothing, like you guys are wrong. Like it's not, people ask me like, how are you so brave to take this position? And I'm like, I'm not brave to take a position that's right. Like you have no idea what you're supporting on the other side. Like you have no idea who's paying for BDS. You don't even understand what it is that they want, because otherwise Sarah Silverman wouldn't have said like, yes, I'm for BDS. I'm like, no, you're not. But like what BDS is doing, as we all know, is they're cloaking their dagger. They're hiding what it is that they're actually about. And they're using all this woke language of justice and freedom and equality. And I'm like, no. You want a country that exists to not exist. And that's fine if you do, by the way. It's America. It's free speech, right? But what you've been doing is lying to liberals. That's why you're able to attract so many of them, and so many from the Jewish community too. So that to me is something that needs to be strongly communicated. I had in mind literally giving ammunition to anybody who's pro-Israel, whether they're a liberal, a progressive, a conservative, whatever, just to as I say in the book, arm yourself with facts and go get yourself in good trouble.
It's really, really powerful. I'm going to encourage everyone on this call to read this book. I think it's both very easy to read and very powerful to use as a tool for each and every one of us who are engaged in this fight. And I think Noa, on behalf of the whole Jewish community, and particularly Lester Canvassers, I just want to thank you for writing it, because I and being out there and being in this fight in such a public and passionate way, because we need advocates like you who are on the front lines and who are willing to stand up and say this is important.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Noah. I also want to give a special shout out and thank you for it. I hear you on Clubhouse regularly. So thank you for all the conversations that you have and contribute to. I also want to share with everyone that after the conference, we're going to send out a follow-up email with a survey, but also with a form for you to fill out your address, because everyone here is going to be able to get a copy of your new book. So we're thrilled to be able to share that with everyone, and be on the lookout tomorrow for the follow-up and for us to be able to ship a book right to your door. So we're thrilled to be able to share that. And thank you so much, Noah, for being here. We really appreciate it. Alums for Campus is thankful. And thank you, Nate, for facilitating and for helping us in the conversation.
Thank you, Avi.